This is Amazing Grace, and Jesus, I sing for all that you have done for me. Good evening. I'm Pastor Sherry Colby, the senior pastor here at Victory Worship Center, and also the host of Amazing Grace. Now, I know I'm always saying I'm excited, I have the most incredible guest. Well, I've known for months that I was going to be asking this guest to be a part of the show, just it had to have the right timing. And Sandy Henschel, I'm so glad to have you, that you said yes to tonight, and I know that wasn't an easy yes. No. For you. Now, Sandy's usually in the back of the church. She is part of the media team here at Victory. She does an amazing job. She's so valuable to us here at Victory. But now someone has to take your place tonight for the show while you're up here. So thank you for saying yes and coming.
My pleasure.
Okay, so take a deep breath, Sandy.
No.
It's all going to be good, all right? Sandy, how long have you been coming to Victory?
12 years.
Gosh, 12 years. I'm telling you, so many people lately have been telling me how many years they've been coming. It's like incredible that that much time has flown by.
Well, we had a conversation about my son when he turned 21, and that's how I keep track.
Okay.
He's 33 now.
Okay, I guess that's an easy way to remember how you came. What stood out? What stands out to you about Victory? Why do you continue to come here? Oh, you can say because of me.
Actually, yes, right. That is part of it. It was... And we'll get into it a little bit more, but when I was growing up in church, I grew up in the Church of God, and they didn't have female pastors. There's no such thing as a female pastor. So some friends invited me here, and the first thing they told me was, it's a female pastor. And
you said, sinner, I can't go.
That's it.
No.
Can't go, you know. that could be deadly. But and then for me, it's because it's a small church. You know, I've been to big churches, and you get lost in the big churches. Some of them you become a number in, and I'm more than a number.
You're a somebody here.
Well,
you're very valuable to us. Well, we're glad you're here. Well, you know, Sandy, because you watch the show and work the show every week, we always have a quote, and my sister sends me 20 a week, so it's which one I pick. But this one I really thought about you when I saw it, okay? The quote is, sometimes the gift you can give another person, sometimes the gift you can give another person is simply to include them.
Okay.
Have you ever felt that way? You find out everybody's doing something and you haven't been invited, and then you know, you kind of feel lonely or your feelings get hurt.
Absolutely.
And so many people are, I believe, are in that situation a lot. And not everybody can supply everybody's need all the time.
No.
But it's still hard when you feel like everybody else is included and you're not.
Absolutely.
Right? Okay. So where are you from originally?
Born and raised right here in West Palm.
Wow. You never left, huh?
I did for a couple of years. I went upstate, up Tennessee area and that, but got the sand in my shoes, can't get it out.
Okay, gotcha. All right, and you have children?
I have one son.
Okay.
And two grandsons.
I know those grandsons, you're always showing me their pictures, so I feel like I know them very well. All right, can you tell me about your salvation experience?
My grandmother got me into church when I was probably 3, 4 years old, and she never let us miss church. It was come by every Sunday, you better be ready. If you weren't, she had a way of getting you ready. So I started attending church through her. As I got a little older, we moved from West Palm to Lake Worth, which took me away from the church that she was in. And at that time, I started attending a church in Lake Worth by myself, but I never walked away from the church at that time. From, like I said, 5, 6, 7 years old, church was my life.
Okay.
I don't know any other way to describe it than I felt different from my family because my immediate family was not church going. My grandmother was, but none of my siblings, not my mother. But God had a hold of me from the beginning, and he just wasn't going to let me say no.
Amen.
So he held on for a long time.
Did you ever walk away?
Yes, I did. We'll get into it a little bit more in a little bit, but I was 27 when I walked away.
And what would be the amount of time? We'll get to exactly what was going on, but what was the span that you walked away from your relationship?
I walked away at 27, and I came back about 36, 37, about 10 years.
Okay, and in a moment you'll begin to understand Sandy's journey, and it's a painful journey. She's been through so much in her lifetime. So let's go ahead and start Sandy's story. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Sandy, I know that there's been a lot of abuse in your life. Do you want to
Yes.
share a little bit about your growing up years?
From as far back as I can remember, and I feel like God has graced me in not allowing me to remember a lot of it, but as far back as I can remember, I was abused, molested by my brother, by one of my brothers.
Okay.
Now, I have had 5 siblings, 4 boys and a sister and myself. One of my brothers was molesting me. I don't know positively, but I have a feeling that another of the brothers was also molesting my sister. But in those days, you have to remember, I grew up in the 50s and the 60s and that, and you didn't talk about that.
No, you couldn't.
It just, I mean, nobody was it talked to about, and
Isn't that great today, though, there's not a stigma? Back in the old days, there would have been such a stigma, somebody wouldn't let their kids hang out with you. Or
No,
that
they
sort of thing.
wouldn't.
But today, at least we can talk about it and people can get help.
they can, but the biggest problem to it is you've got to have the courage to come forth.
Yeah. Takes a lot of
Because-
courage.
Well, in my case, I mean, this one, like I said, this went on for a long time, and I finally did go to my mother, and I told her what was going on, and she didn't believe me.
Well, that hurts.
So-
There's a double hurt.
Well, no, it got worse because she then took me to my grandmother, who was a nurse, had my grandmother examine me, and my grandmother told her, I don't see any signs of it. So now, my grandmother has been the apple of my eye all of my life because she got me in church. She had me, she included me. And now she's denying the one thing that was hurting me so much. And I finally had the strength to come forth and say something about it, and now she's saying, I'm lying. It didn't happen. Well, that created in itself bigger problems because now I have a grandmother that doesn't believe me, my mother doesn't believe me, and my brother now says, hey, nobody believes her, I can get away with it. So it continued. And I mean, it's one of the things, as I got older, I know growing up, I know my mother loved me. I have no doubt of that. But my mother did the best that she could with what she knew. She
Okay.
had 6 kids by herself. So
Where was your dad?
my father died when I was 4, and
Oh, wow.
her second husband was an alcoholic, and at some point he just left.
Okay.
So I grew up without a father
So there's your mom and 6 kids.
and 6 kids,
All
2
right.
boys, a girl, 2 boys, and a girl. So it was, in all the time in growing up, I had no fatherly figure. I had no male figure to look to that wasn't hurting me.
Okay.
So it begins a very vicious cycle in life that if a man walked near me, it was like, stranger danger, run. And
They're going to hurt you.
they're going to hurt me. And there was a few through that time that were not family members who did. And it added to
So more abuse through
more
other family
abuse,
members?
more distrust.
They probably
and-
heard that nobody was believing, and so just,
And it's an open door. I mean, you don't think, well, okay, it was inside the family. No. It actually carried into an uncle. It carried into a cousin, and then some friends of the family. And you sit back and you think, well, wait a minute. If I can't talk to my mom,
Yeah.
how are these people finding out about it?
yeah.
But and I never did find out, and I really don't care.
But the hurt, how to be.
You don't get rid of the hurt. You
No,
carry it.
because no one's believing you. You're being abused, and then inwardly you're just going inside.
You keep crawling deeper and deeper within yourself. And I mean, at this point now, I have no trust when it comes to men. Male
At
figures.
this time in your life.
At this time in my life, there is no trust for any male figures, not even my pastor. And I loved my pastor dearly, but I had no trust in him.
And I remember you telling me too that this is what made it kind of difficult with your walk with the Lord, is because everybody always said God, and
God,
they would say He.
Father, Daddy.
And so
all,
you didn't know if you could trust Him either.
There was no trust in God. At this point, my trust in God, I knew I was still trying to walk the Christian life. And I knew that I had to stay in church. This was what my life. This was my stronghold. But I had no trust in God. I had no trust in Jesus because they were referred to as males.
Okay, so now the time comes that did you get married? You have a son, so were you married or were?
Well, What happened was when my brother was old enough to move out, then the abuse from him stopped.
Okay.
And I did get married.
Were you in love?
No. I got married to get out of the house.
Okay.
And it ended up being, I was only married 2 years. It ended up being a very vicious cycle. I ended up losing a set of twins in the 2 years that I was married. I lost a set of twins, which there was nothing I wanted more than to be a mom. Mm-hmm. And I lost the twins, and there again, let's dump a little bit more hurt, a little more of the confidence is taken away, the self-esteem is gone. Mm-hmm. And I just, after 2 years, we divorced. And
so you went through that stigma too?
I had that stigma, and at that point, my siblings started making comments about, well, she couldn't stay married because she's gay.
Okay.
Okay, but I mean, I've done nothing to give them that reason to think that other than the fact that my marriage didn't last. I didn't do a lot of dating growing up and that, but it was because I didn't want to.
Okay.
I was more interested in church.
Okay.
You know, I had friends and that was fine, but I wasn't real big into the dating, and not all girls are. So, you know, for the girls that are listening that are saying, I don't want to date, it's okay. You don't have to.
Okay.
Doesn't mean there's anything wrong. You know, so you gotta be careful when you're around, you know, if you're around a teenager, a woman in her 30s, a woman in her 50s, when you get to my age, I'm still not dating. Mm-hmm. But that's my preference.
Okay, let's move on from, so here all this abuse has gone on in your life. You have such distrust with men, and so then you get to a time in your life that you decided that you were going to choose a different lifestyle.
Well,
tell me how that happened.
Let me tell you how it led up to it. I'm 27 now, okay? All this time growing up, I'm begging God. You know, you go to church on the holidays and all your family's there and everything, and here I sit all alone. And for the longest time, I'm begging God, I want a family member to go to church with. You know, I'm tired of being there alone. Loneliness is very detrimental.
Yeah, it is.
So my mother all of a sudden decides to start going to church. And I thought, this is great. I've got my mother and my grandmother in church with me. I finally have family. It lasted 6 months. My grandmother passed away, and 10 days later, I lost my mom.
Okay.
When I lost my mom, I found her. So that really was not a pleasant situation, but in all of it, it was, I turned on God at that point, and I said, you know, I begged you for years to have family members in church with me. You give me family members, and now 6 months later, you take them away. I'm blaming him. You know, you took them away. And at that point, I said, no, I'm done.
Okay.
So I moved to Fort Lauderdale and got a job down there and was working. I met my son's father there. I was not married to my son's father, but I met him in Fort Lauderdale, and he lived in Tennessee. A few months goes by, and I lost my job down there, and I'm talking to him on the phone one day, and he says, well, come up here and live with me. At this point, I mean, I'm basically estranged from my family. Mm-hmm. I got nothing in Fort Lauderdale now because I've lost my job, so I said, well, why not? So I moved to Tennessee to be with my son's father. I was up there maybe 6 months, ended up getting pregnant. I was the happiest person on this earth because I'm going to have a baby. You know, finally, I'm going to have something, somebody can't take it away from me. Mm-hmm. Boy, was I wrong. Later. But, so I had my son in Tennessee. There was already trouble between him and his father and I because his father could not be faithful. And I thought, you know, even though I'm not married to you, you're going to be faithful to me, and I'm going to be faithful to you.
Okay.
He couldn't live that way, so I ended up coming back to Florida.
All right, so let's move on to, so now you're upset with God, all these things have happened, now you're in this.
I'm back to Florida.
You're back to Florida, so tell us how you got involved in the change of lifestyle.
When I came back to Florida, it's very hard raising a child by yourself. And so that meant, you know, I now am the breadwinner. I've got to supply the home and everything for my son. I took a job. I loved my job. And I met a woman on this job.
Okay.
And one thing led to another, and we ended up into a relationship. She had already been living the gay lifestyle. And I did not know it when I first met her, but over time, I figured it out, we figured it out, and we ended up moving in together. And, you know, one thing that I have to say that kind of brings before that up to this, through all of this, God never took his hand off of me. I took my hand out of his, but he never took his hand off of me, because through all of the abuse, through all of the stupid things that we do, I never got any diseases. I never lost my mind. I had a solid mind the whole time. And when I would go by churches on Sunday and you hear the music blaring out, my heart would ache.
Okay.
And I knew why it was aching, but I wasn't ready to come back. So I got into the relationship with this woman. We were together for 9 years. And every once in a while, she would make a comment about my son. She was never mean to my son, but she would make a comment about him because he was growing up to be the one thing she despised, a man.
Okay.
But I also found out now in all of this, she had also been abused as a child.
Okay.
So it's there's a decent chance that sometimes people who choose the alternative lifestyle, there's abuse back there somewhere, and they haven't dealt with it.
Do you think that you really, you know, people say that they were born that way or something?
No, I don't think I was born that way.
So you feel like you made a conscious choice to step into this relationship with this woman?
Because this woman gave me the one thing that nobody else had given me. She loved me.
Okay.
She loved me for who I was. All of my warts, all of my scars, and everything else, she accepted me for me.
Okay.
And she loved me. And that was one thing that had been lacking in my life my entire time. Like I said, I know my mom loved me, but there was something missing between my mother and I. There was a connection missing that we never, before she died, it was never made.
One thing you had said to me when we were discussing the show is that you're trying to instruct that there are certain things if someone's in a relationship or whatever, not to use the word homosexual. Why would we not use that word?
I'm not trying to sugarcoat what it is. I mean, it is what it is. You can call it whatever you want to. Me personally, I don't like the word homosexual because it's cruel. If someone had said that to me when I was beginning to feel God pulling me in and that again, and they kept using that word, it's very cruel, it's very demeaning, and I would have ran the other way because it hurts. And when you're trying to reach somebody who is living the gay life and that, you can't come at them and attack them because they're going to run. I don't want, you say you're this and you're God's child and you're a Christian and everything, but you're attacking me. And if you think about it in the Bible, Jesus never attacked. He loved.
Right. He always instructed what was right.
Right.
The right
and that's
way
why
to
I'm
go.
saying, I'm not saying that the gay life is right. I'm not saying being homosexual is right. By no means am I saying that. But I am saying that you have to be careful when you're saying certain things, and not just that.
What you're saying is if we speak in that way, they're
going to put a guard up. They're going to put a guard up, and I don't want to hear that.
Because I think that Christians, are very small-minded or whatever.
They're very closed-minded.
Right.
I wouldn't say that they're small-minded,
We're closed-minded.
but they are closed-minded, and I can say that because I was.
Okay, but you get to a point, now you're living this lifestyle for like 9 years, but all of a sudden, what happened for you to realize that this wasn't God's plan?
Let me tell you the lesson that I learned. Never promise your child something because they don't forget. My son and I was driving down Jog Road one day. We were going home on a Sunday, and we passed a church, and the parking lot was full. Cars everywhere. You could hear the music and that. He said, "Mom, what's that building? What's going on in there?" And I told him, I said, "It's a church, son. They're having church." "Well, what's that?" Because I had him in church when he was a baby, but by the time he was 3-4 years old, I was out of church again.
Okay.
So I told him, I tried to explain to him what it was. And he says, "Well, can we go?" And I said, "Yeah, one day we'll go." No intentions of going because I was in my life. I was happy here. I had no intentions of taking him, but I promised him. And he knew if I promised, I was going to keep my promise. Well, it took a few more years, but God got me to a point, because he would, every few weeks, we'd go by that church and say, Mom, you promised you'd take me there. Mom, and I finally got tired of hearing, Mom, you promised. So I got up one Sunday and I took him to church. I was very uncomfortable because I knew what I was living outside of the church was not what God wanted. And I was not where I should be to even be sitting. But by sitting there, he was able to pull even harder on me. And it was only maybe a month or so after we started going to church that I couldn't take it. And I knew I had to make a decision. Either I was going to continue to live this way, or I was coming back to church. I was coming back to God.
Okay.
And I knew, even though growing up there was so much pain and hurt, I still felt something. There was a security there. I couldn't explain it, but there was a security
It's like family.
there. No, it wasn't the church. It was a security in God,
Oh, I see what you're
even
saying.
though I didn't want to acknowledge it to be that. But as I started going to church and I got more involved, it kept pulling, it kept tugging, and it finally got to a point where I knew I had to make a decision. It was one or the other. I couldn't have both. And it was a very hard decision, because I knew when I went home that day and I had made the decision, I'm done, I'm going back to church. I had to go home and break somebody's heart. And it did. I mean, it broke my heart, but it broke her heart too. And
Do you think you really were gay? Or
at
you
the
were
time
just-
at the time that I was living with her, yes.
Okay.
Because, I mean, any good-looking guy could have walked past me and would have, whatever.
Okay.
I was dedicated to this person.
Okay.
You know, I had no desire to look anywhere else. This person made me happy. We had a good life together. So I wasn't interested anywhere else. But God was still interested. And I couldn't get away from that. So when I decided to go back to church, you know, I stood at the day I finally said, okay, God, I'm yours. I sat in the church, and I always sit in the back of the church. I've always sat in the back. And I'm sitting in the back of the church, and I'm thinking, you know, who's going to want me? With all this stuff from my past, all the bitterness, all the abuse, all the hurt, the pain that was there, and it was huge. I mean, I felt like I was carrying an elephant on my back from everything that happened. In my mind, I'm thinking, who's going to want me? And I heard this little voice in the back of my head say, I do.
Oh, isn't that God?
You know, and it was just that still, small, little voice.
Did you just break at that moment?
I did. That was the moment that I broke, and I said, okay. I still didn't trust him.
Okay. I get it.
I still didn't trust him, because he's him. He's a him. But I knew somebody wanted me. And so I started going back to church, got involved with the church a little bit, started raising my son in the church. I mean, I went from just attending to went to the choir, started working with the kids, was in the kitchen ministry. I was involved all through the church, and I thought I was happy. But then something happened, and I had to choose the church or somewhere else, this church or somewhere else. I didn't understand at the time, but later on, and that's how I ended up here at Victory. What had happened when I started going to that church, after a little while, God put some special people in my life, women who were married, but they were able to love on me because I trusted them. So they were able to love on me, and they were able to pull me in and begin to build my self-esteem back up. But when it came time for me to move, and I told God, I'm not leaving here, I'm happy, nope, I'm set. Well, he allowed something to happen that I saw, and it wasn't bad, but I saw it. And to me, it was bad. And when it happened, I left the church. I even went and talked to the pastor about it, but no, it was time to go. And I said, but wait a minute, God, I'm happy here. I don't want to leave. It's time to go. So through some friends, I ended up coming here to Victory. And I didn't understand why. It was like, why, you know?
I'm happy where I was at.
I'm happy.
serving
Life
where I'm
is
at.
great,
You
you know?
were growing where you were at.
But I wasn't growing in the right area.
Okay. Oh.
He brought me to Victory, and for the first little while I was here, Sat right over there in that corner, sat in the very back. I was a nobody. The few people that knew me when they invited me here was all that knew me. Otherwise, I was a nobody. I could sit in that corner. I was the little church mouse that nobody saw. But God was working. And in the process of him working, there was a couples that he started moving in on me. And to describe it the best way I can, what was special about these were the husbands were manly men, but they were in touch with their soft side.
Okay.
Not all men are.
No.
And that's okay. But these particular couples, the men were in touch with their soft side. And by being like that, it made it easier for me to get near them.
Okay, it actually started opening your heart to maybe
It opened
not
it
all
up
men
to where
are
I
bad.
started trusting males.
Okay.
And in through trusting the males, not only was I trusting the males that I could see, but I also started trusting him.
Okay.
The trust in him started building again. And it got to a point where I went through a spell where I couldn't call him daddy. You know, he wasn't daddy, he was God. Okay, and that's where I kept him. You're God, you're up here. You can hurt me, not that you will, but you can hurt me, so you stay up here, and I'm going to stay down here. But then slowly he started coming down as he was raising me up.
Amen.
And,
Well,
you know.
So you go through this relationship for all these years. It took a lot of courage to step out of that. You know you're in a new season of your life. I'm sure you went through a lot of repentance or whatever it would be, and just to be restored in him. And here your life, you know, you've been through so much, and now you have this son, and this son is your everything. Because I remember when I first met you, he was riding a motor bike or whatever, and he came by your house every day. And so you had a very close relationship. You have one child, it's a son, and then he gets involved with a young woman, which I know things are okay. I know it's okay today, but
it wasn't
you went through
then.
many years of being excluded.
We did. There was quite a struggle because as much as I loved my son and as close as I was to my son, I did not interfere in my son's life. He would do things that he knew I didn't approve of. But I'm not the type of mother to say, you're going to hell for that, or, you know, you shouldn't be doing that.
But still, he would come over and have a relationship with you
yes,
as mom.
we
So
had
a very strong mother-son relationship. But all of a sudden, now here comes another hurt in your life. Your only child is involved with a young woman who's obviously jealous that he's close to his mother.
Yep.
So the purpose is, let's get your son away from his mother, and you felt very excluded.
Very much so. I mean, he lived he wasn't a tenth of a mile from where I lived, and yet I never saw him.
Right, and I know how painful. I watched, you know, you were here, and you know, I would see the pain that you went through, and then of course he moved away, which made it even harder, to another state, and you have grandchildren, and you're feeling like, my gosh, this is all I ever wanted, but now this was taken away from me too.
Yep. And of course, in there now, I'm getting stronger in God, but there's still a part of me that's saying, God, what are you doing?
Right.
You know, why are you allowing this to happen? Well, it was a strange thing. I read a book, and if you question why God allows things in that, I want to tell you, go get the shack and read it. When you hit the end of the shack, you'll understand.
Or go watch the movie.
Well, I've never watched the movie, but I read the book.
The movie is really good. I mean, you'll bawl by the end of that movie. You're like,
you'll bawl all the way through the book.
Yeah.
But at the end of the book, I got my answer to why. And it was really, it totally blew me away when I got it. But it's simple. God says in His Word, you know, He created man, and He will not go against man's will.
No.
So now I have to, again, this is getting me to healing again. Now I have to look back over my entire life. And okay, wait a minute. God didn't allow me to be abused. It was my brother's choice. Right. So I can't blame God for that. God didn't allow my husband and I to have the problems that we had. It was our choice. So I can't blame God for that. God didn't take my mom away from me and my grandmother. That's life.
Right.
So I can't blame God for that. And all of a sudden, everything I'm blaming God for is being taken away.
It's always easier if you think you have somebody to blame for things that are going on anyway.
And it's easiest to blame God because you can't see him, you can't touch him.
Right. You know, for many years we had an overcomers group, and I would see so many women that had been abused, and back then they still were afraid to talk freely about it. You know, I always wish they would, because I always wanted to say, you're sitting next to someone who's been through the same thing that you have, if you would just talk to them. But I remember one time just, you know, in tears in my car on I-95 coming home, and I said the same thing. Why do you let this happen? He said, I'm crying. He goes, I don't let that happen. Same thing to me. He said, I am crying into the ear of that person, but they're not listening. But I can't make someone.
He can't go against their will.
So through this, you know, journey of hurt in your life, you know, I've seen a big change in you actually in the last couple years. And it's, as your pastor, it's been refreshing. You don't seem to be on guard as much. You seem to let the guard down. You seem to laugh a little more. So that's so exciting to me as your pastor, to see your growth and in your healing. But I know one of the things that was part of the healing, you're an amazing writer, because you write all the time. If you ever read a lot of the things that Sandy has written. But you wrote something, and actually I sent this to my mom, and their church actually, you know, looked at this also. You wrote this little paper called My Confession that is so powerful. My mom will say to me, you know, God, I guess even a few weeks ago, the Lord had said to her, go get that confession paper and read it again.
I actually wrote this paper sitting right back there in the sound booth.
See there?
Just before church, and then partially into one of the services one night. I sat back there and wrote this, because at that time, I think I had finally hit a point where I could break in front of God.
Amen. Amen.
And that's really what brought this about, was being able to break in front of God.
You know, it takes a lot. You know, we're so afraid if we break, we're going to crumble. Everybody's going to think we're weak. No, and God is saying, this is when I can do my best work in your healing, right?
Exactly.
So, Sandy, I want you to read what you wrote, and we'll give you Sandy's email address at the end of the show if you'd like to have a copy of this, because it's really something that will just bless your heart along the way, and especially if you know people who maybe have felt this way in their life. So if you'd go ahead and read this. She wrote this, and she's talking to God, okay?
God, can I crawl up in your lap and feel your arms around me? Can you show me you're here now? I don't want to think about tomorrow or next week. I want right here, right now. I want to trust you. I want to have that strong belief in you I once had. I don't like these ugly responses that I'm having to things going on around me. There's a part of me that says, I have to forgive you, but you're God. I get forgiveness from you. I may not understand about a lot of things, but I'm supposed to trust you. And there starts the problem. I've lost my trust in you. I don't know when, where, or how, but I have. I know you gave the ultimate for this world, and I know that if it was just me, you still would have done it. I don't want to put Jesus back on the cross. Once was enough. Now I need to know that he walks next to me. I need to know that he carries me when I can't take another step. God, I'm tired of feeling like this. I'm tired of carrying all this weight on my shoulders. I'm tired of missing you. I want to be happy. I want to see everything you're doing in my life, right down to the littlest of things. I want to serve you with everything that I have. I don't want to be angry. I don't want to feel alone, unworthy, and unloved. This doesn't make sense to me, but here I go. I forgive you. For the pain, for abandoning me, for the family I was put with, for the abuse and not protecting me, for life being so hard, for taking all those that were important to me away. You don't need my forgiveness, but I need to give it to you. I want the pain of my childhood gone, so here, take it. I want this feeling of unworthiness gone, so here, take it. I want the feeling of guilt and shame gone, whether they're mine to have or not. So here, take them. I want the pain of my lost children gone. They're with you. Take it. The things that I know I've done wrong, I don't want brought up again. So here, take them. I can't carry the burden of my son and his family anymore. So here, take him. I can't continue to worry about how I'm going to make it. So take the worry. I can't carry all the stress, so take it. I don't want the loneliness anymore, take it. I don't want the fear of tomorrow, so you can have it. I can't handle my life and all the changes, so you can have that too. I don't want the memories of unforgotten birthdays, uncelebrated achievements, and disappointing holidays, take them. The emptiness of a missing father, you can have. The broken promises, broken dreams, take them. Take the feeling of an actual rejection from me. Take the dreams and nightmares that wake me shaking and crying in the night. Take them. Take the feeling of not fitting in anywhere away. Take the not being good enough to be around away. Go into the very depths of my very depths and find the things that I've tried to hide from even myself and remove them. Remove all of the darkness and fill it with your light. Remind me that you don't see my failures or faults, that you see me as your child, forgiven, loved, and worthy to be called your child. Remind me that you don't see my failures or faults, that you see me as your child, forgiven, loved, worthy to be called your child. Now take the empty shell that I'm creating and fill it with you. After I wrote this, it was maybe a week or so later, I went back and I read it again.
I think it was even a little bit longer than that.
It may have been, but I was sitting at home in a quiet living room, just me and my little fur babies and that, and I read through this again, and when I hit the last line, and I said, take the empty shell that I'm creating and fill it with you, all of a sudden I heard God say to me, I will when you let go. That was hard, because then I realized I hadn't let go. I asked him to take it all, but I was still holding on. Just prior to this being written, God will set you up. He's the best at setting you up. And he set me up into a group that you and I have talked about, and I've gotten involved with them. And I was serving on a particular weekend, and the position that he put me in on the team on that weekend required me to stay in the room with everybody all day.
You can say the ministry that you're involved in.
It's Via de Cristo. And they take a weekend, they take it for the men and they do a weekend for the women. And there's a lot of things that go on. Well, this particular weekend I was on the team and I was required to stay in the room. Now, and I've talked to I have some friends here from Via de Cristo, and I've talked to several people and they've told me they've never in a weekend heard so many people talk about being abused. But this weekend, everybody was talking, and I'm sitting, I can't get away. You know, I'm open the back door, I'm out of here. But I couldn't get away. Well, that was the beginning of me finally healing.
See, because you hear, that's what I'm trying to say. If other people will share their pain, you know, we can comfort somebody else. That's what the word says.
You can. And I'll tell you, the hardest thing for me when it came to the sharing was the shame.
Well, of course.
The shame. But the sad part about it is, the shame's not mine.
No, he took it.
Well, but not only that, but why should I be ashamed of what my brother did to me?
Right.
You know, why should I be ashamed of some of the relationships that I was in, normal relationships that I got hurt in? Why should I carry that shame? I shouldn't, but we do.
Yep. Oh, for sure.
And until we learn to let go of that, we're not going to talk about it. We're not going to share it. We're going to hide.
But see, I really believe, like I said, watching you through the years, once you did this, and then the time later, I felt like your first step of breaking and not letting, because you always had a wall up, like everybody, you can only get this close, you know.
Okay.
And I love being back in that sound booth because you know, you can stay away from me now. But I remember after you wrote the first part, a softening started But once you got the second part, Sandy was able to be Sandy, who she really is, and not worried, will somebody like me or not like me? You were okay with being you.
Because I'd gotten to a point when I wrote that second part, I finally got to a point where when I looked in the mirror, I didn't look through these eyes. I was looking through God's eyes at me. And God didn't see my warts, and he didn't see my cracks, and he didn't see my blemishes. He saw somebody that he sent his son for.
Amen.
And I still have, there's times that it's still hard for me. Do I struggle with the gay life? Yes, every once in a while I do. Because loneliness is something very hard. And at this point in my life, I'm the only one left of my family.
Right, I know all your siblings are gone.
All of my siblings are gone. I lost my last 3 siblings in a span of 3 years. And it's just me now. My son lives in Ohio. So I have no blood relatives left. So, I'm kind of, not to the extent that it was, but I'm kind of back to holidays, birthdays, achievements, and it's like, here we go again. But then I hear that little voice in my head saying, no, I'm proud of you.
Amen.
So if nobody else tells me they're proud of me, I hear God telling me now, I'm proud of you.
Amen.
And it makes, makes a world of difference.
Sometimes I feel sorry for single people in a church, and I think sometimes they think that everybody else is having fun and doing all these things, and it's not necessarily like that. You can have a family and your kids, and you can be lonely in a family, okay?
I was in a family of 7, and I still was lonely.
But I always wish that the single people, instead of saying, I wish somebody would invite me, I wish they would get together and invite each other. I mean, you can't, because sometimes it's not always that easy, because, for some people, if you invite one, then one finds out that you invited that one, and it gets to be hurt feelings all the way around.
Yeah. But it's just as hard for single people to get with other single people and say, hey, let's go do this, or let's go do that. It's just as hard. Especially when you're coming out of a shell.
When you're coming out, honey, go invite somebody. On your birthday, say, I want to go out with you on my birthday.
My birthday's past now.
See there? You got to let people.
It is.
But if you know Thanksgiving's coming, you might say, you know what? Instead of saying, is anyone going to invite me? You might say, you know what? I'm going to get a turkey, and I'm going to look around and see who I can invite to my house. See there?
Never know. Might surprise you.
See there? That's all it takes. So we got to step out of that, and because that's really when a lot of the pity party can happen. But like we said, I think everybody suffers with loneliness at some time in their life.
They do, and for those of you that don't suffer, you think you don't suffer with loneliness, I dare you to take 2 hours, go in your car, drive anywhere you want to, turn the radio off, turn your phone off, nobody in the car but you for 2 hours.
And?
Then come back and tell me how you feel. Because you're going to realize all of a sudden, I'm alone. I can't pick up my phone and call anybody. I can't talk to anybody. I can't listen to the radio. But now when you're
God gave you your little doggies, okay?
Oh, those are my babies. And they talk to me. But if you really have never experienced loneliness, try it. Mm-hmm. You won't experience what a lot of single people experience, but you'll get a better idea of what loneliness is like. And I do know that there are married couples, married families and that do experience loneliness.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not just the single person's
Can
problem.
be in I know families, there's families, but because people are on different pages, you're not invited to anything either. Mm-hmm. So it really works all the way across.
It does. But the one thing that I would say, and it's not necessarily just the singleness, but to kind of tie this whole thing up together, if somebody comes to you and they say, this is my problem, whether it be I was abused as a child, or I'm in an abusive relationship with my husband, or I'm having feelings for this lady over here, this man, don't ever turn your back on them. You might not have the answer, but you do have a shoulder that they can talk to.
I think most of the time people just want somebody to listen.
Don't
give advice. It's my,
That's the biggest thing, is that we just want someone to talk to.
Right.
And sometimes, and I know this from experience, I have a very dear friend of mine who was going through this, and I don't know how she knew I had been through it, but she called me on the phone one night and she said, what do you think about this? And my first instinct was run the other way. But then I talked to her and I told her, I said, you know, I can't make that decision. You have to.
Right.
But I will tell you this, you're going to be shut off from people because it's just instinct. You're going to be cut off from people. You're going to experience feelings that you've never felt before, and then you're not going to know what to do with them. So you choose, you make your decision, but I'll always be here.
Amen.
No matter what you choose, I'll always be here.
Well, Sandy, I'm so happy that you had the courage to come on here and share your testimony. And, you know, God's using you in a great and mighty way. Again, we appreciate you so much here at Victory. And I want to encourage you next week. I'm having someone return. One of my very first guests was my pharmacist, Damian Simmons. And it was an incredible show that we had. And he's coming next week. And Pastor Craig may be on the panel with me. But we're going to be talking about COVID and COVID shots, okay, next week. So I encourage you to tune in, and those of you who know Damien know what an incredible man he is. Can I get an amen? I know he's your pharmacist too, Ayla. All right.
Pastor Sherry, let me say this one thing. If you want a copy of my confession,
oh, yeah.
You can email me at gatorgirlskh@gmail.com. And I'll be more than happy to send you a copy of it.
Can you say that again?
Gator, like the alligator, gatorgirlskh@gmail.com.
Thank you so much. Okay, again, tune in next week. We ask you that you would share this show so more people can maybe get healing through Sandy's testimony. Remember the Thursday chat at 9 o'clock sharp, and share everything we do Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. We hope that everybody's coming back little by little, so it's getting quite exciting. And if not, watch us live stream at 10 a.m. God bless, and just be thankful for God's amazing grace.